our elected officials are currently demonstrating that they are not taking responsibility and not reflecting what the people are asking. Hey y'all, welcome back to another fabulous episode of Queer 101, the podcast where we talk about any and everything under the sun, including queer art, queer literature, queer history, queer culture, whatever we want to talk about. I'm Peppermint.
And I'm Hugh the historian.
Oh, and we've been talking about Audre Lorde's fabulous book, Sister Outsider. And last week we got into a really interesting conversation. So I just want to jump right in. We were talking about erotics and eroticism and the erotic, the notion of something being erotic used not to be oppressive, but also potentially liberating for queer folks and probably for everybody in general. And so, but certainly for queer folks.
Absolutely.
And so, but we started talking about Heated Rivalry, which if there's anybody listening, and if Hugh extended an invitation for you all to watch Heated Rivalry and also give your opinions on Heated Rivalry. We got pretty deep into it. Pardon the pun. And
if you haven't watched it yet, are you living under a rock? But anyway,
darling. But it really did spur sort of a really interesting conversation about eroticism, fetishes, and or fetish, and queerness, the closet being liberated, oppression, repression, all those things. And so we're going to continue the conversation. Yeah, depression.
There was something, Pep, that you said after we stepped out of the studio that has been playing in my mind ever since, all week. And I think it's so smart, and it's about the erotics and politics and life and culture. And you were saying, God, I wish you at home could hear the conversations we have after we turn off the mics, because of course there's so much great stuff. So I just want to bring this back up. You were talking about how the Overton window has changed for all of this, that what we can say publicly about sexuality and what we can say publicly about other people have changed in such just vast ways since Audre Lorde was writing in the 70s. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that for our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the context we were talking about the sort of we had asked a question about fetishization and particularly the very enthusiastic audience of Heated Rivalry, and comparing that to my experience and the experience of many trans women that I've spoken to, who feel at times, probably more often than not, fetishized by our romantic suitors, our sexual partners, and then going beyond that, the conversation about what is socially acceptable. And we, landed on, just the juxtaposition, because we were talking about eroticism and how people have viewed it sort of through this puritanical lens. And, the fact that we have the arbiters of morality in the United States are oftentimes the politicians. And those are obviously the people that are making the laws, the laws that intersect with or at least overlap with, or in some ways maybe reflect morality in a way.
Pretend to reflect morality at least.
Yeah. Juxtaposed to the response to the Epstein files, as we're seeing in Britain, where they're people who are implemented a year ago with the Epstein files, just the loose association, knowing that they may have been, obviously we know that they did a lot more, but it's just enough to know that they had an association without having seen all of the files coming out. All of it, which we still don't have all the files. We still only have half the files. But as many of the files that are out now, as much damning evidence or circumstantial evidence or proof and testimony and witnesses and all these different things that are coming out, we still are not able to get at the people in power who are deciding on what's going to be released, many of them are the ones who are in fact in the damn Epstein
Oh
files
yeah. Yeah.
themselves.
It's
Good.
crazy what they can say publicly, do publicly, that we all know about. And I don't want to say this is, because of Trump, because there's so much more than just Trump going on here. And he is a symptom as much as a source of the problem. But I do think we live in a time now where like so many of the people who are on Team Trump, who they love his ability to be offensive, to say awful things publicly. And that now that has
Hmm.
almost made it like a badge of pride. I was reading something about how that wellness quack who was caught up in the Epstein files in the most recent trench of documents that came out like a
Dr.
week
Oz?
ago.
Oh, no.
No, well, one of the many, I guess. Dr. Atia, who had just been
Oh.
hired to be a CBS correspondent by Barry Weiss.
Oh,
And I
yeah,
mean,
recently. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
and it's terrible. I mean, the stuff in there, the emails are awful. They should be disqualifying from him being an opinion journalist on CBS News, and yet
Never
he
will.
still has, yep. Yeah, and Barry Weiss is fighting for him to stay. And it's like it's crazy to me that we can be, I don't know. I guess when I was younger, I was dumb or simpler. I didn't think very
We
complicatedly, and I thought,
believed.
okay, yeah, I thought things were moving in a direction. Okay, there would be more openness around, the ability to talk about sexuality, about our desires, our genders, about LGBT identities, um, and that would come hand in hand with an openness to talking about sexual violence and to holding people accountable. And the Me Too movement even seems like maybe we were just starting to walk that line to get to a place where we were like, okay, we can talk about our experiences as survivors of sexual violence, and maybe people will therefore be held accountable for being perpetrators of sexual violence. And instead, it's become a time where it seems like they can just brag about it, and people will still vote for them and subscribe to their YouTube channels and fucking publish their goddamn books.
I won't say it's linear because that did happen. There was accountability in certain regards, and certainly people became more accountability minded. I think the average everyday person did. I do think that it changed certainly the I would imagine changed the culture in workplaces and things like that. And so that did happen, but we're seeing that there are two systems of justice, and there are two um approaches when it comes to accountability. And that is only for, it's morphed into accountability only for your political, opponent, and, not for whoever's on your side, I
Your
guess.
tribe, your side, yeah, your
Yeah.
team.
And I would say that that's not both sidesing it. That is, of course, it does go across the board. But if we were to break it up politically, then like in terms of down partisan lines, then it would. I think it weighs heavier on the right, but that's an opinion. But regardless, the two systems we're talking about that I'm talking about is not left right. It is obviously the people who are privileged, who have a lot of access to power. I mean, we're seeing that like not only was not to make this an Epstein conversation. Not only apparently was Epstein implicated and implicated with people and the highest levels of government, both in the United States and internationally, and not only were those people who were like in elected office and positions of
Mhm.
power, but then also their version of the CIA and their intelligence organizations, and then beyond that, you know. Epstein was lauded as some kind of a financial genius, and it looks like I've only read of minutia and
Mhm.
like vomited. Um, but like, and the couple of emails that I was seeing, he wasn't not necessarily coming off as a genius. He was like being given privileged insider trading information that he was using,
Mhm.
and benefiting off of. But all that, but that
Yeah.
seems like what put Martha Stewart in
Yeah.
jail and disqualified Hillary Clinton seems like
Mhm.
child's play now compared to what the stuff that is also in there. But what's
Yeah.
also shocking is that the architect behind a lot of what we're seeing happen now looks like it might have actually been connected to Jeffrey Epstein. When we're talking about this very weird fanaticism
Mhm.
of people's political icons that they're
Yeah.
so in love with and so, goo goo gaga about now, where the Overton window has shifted, and years ago, someone saying something like grab him by the pussy
By the post.
or
Yep.
whatever they're going to say now feels like a joke
Mhm.
compared to what is actually being said and done today. A lot of that is because so many people who were um, treated as and viewed as conspiracy theorists who were using QAnon, which, and there's a really good documentary. I think I watched it on Netflix. I can't remember what it's called. This, it's not called social media. The social something or other. It's about how right wing Christian fundamentalist, right wing conservatism swirled together with the incel
Mhm.
community, and got
Isolated
us what we
community.
got today, what we have today, and that's through QAnon, which was through Poll, which was through 4chan, which was
Mhm.
started on a Reddit board,
By someone who was connected to
allegedly by
Epstein.
Epstein, and I'm like, what in the hell?
Yeah, and I think it is not coincidental. I think there is
It's
some element
not.
of this in which like these people bond over these awful. I mean, like we were talking about last week, where Audre Lorde talks about the erotics bringing lesbians together to fight for equal rights, for white
Mm-hmm.
and black lesbians. But this is like the like evil mirror of that. It's like
Version of
these
that.
guys are, yeah, they're bonding over abusing people, over that Dr. Addy in one of his emails says something about like, I'm so excited to be part of your outrageous life. It's just I can't tell anyone. It's so sad I can't tell anyone about it. And there's this that there's something about the disgustingness that becomes a like bond. And so then if any one of them gets in trouble, well, all of them have to
Well,
like.
it's either one or all, and that's
Mm-hmm.
probably what their mindset is, which is maybe feel freeing to talk about it so candidly amongst each other in
Yeah.
email with a record, um, you know, acknowledging that there is a level of shame publicly, that
Mm-hmm.
this is not something that they're just going around talking about with everybody. And I guess that's the piece of it with regards to Audre Lorde and the liberatory, is that a word?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nature of eroticism, I'll say. Um, uh, when and the notion of being um, mutually liberating, is that I guess when people are oppressed, like women fighting for, in the 70s for specifically for the ERA, um,
Mm-hmm.
coming together because they're both oppressed classes, even though, there's some differences, obviously,
Yeah.
and, white women benefited from that wave of feminism far more than black women did. But um, they were both fighting, right? Where for, social acceptance and all these different things and their civil rights, quite
Yeah.
literally. Whereas these guys are not fighting for their civil rights. These guys are already using the
They're
laws
fighting
that they
for
can.
more power
Yeah,
than they've
they're
had
fighting for
already
more
over everyone.
power, which results in people's civil rights being trampled on. The civil
Mm-hmm.
rights of the literal victims that he's talking about in that email. Someone's rights are being violated when he's talking about, oh, I like the wild nature. Let me go to that party where you tie up all the people or where you kidnap the people. Or I'm not saying that that's what he
Mm-hmm.
said in that particular
Right,
email,
right.
but I'm saying what he's implying when these wild parties. He doesn't mean that wild party where like, oh my God, that onion dip was so good. That's not what he's talking about.
That great
So he's
singer.
talking about how
No.
we're abusing someone, and
Yeah.
that means
And
someone's
that
civil and
becomes,
human rights are being violated.
yeah, and that becomes a chit that they exchange with each other, a way of bonding
Mm-hmm.
and exchanging power and becoming closer and becoming more tightly knit together in these like sort of disgusting and awful ways. And I think that like it's like not only are these girls and women being trafficked once in their bodies and their experiences, but it's
Mm-hmm.
like the idea of them as trafficked a second time to make this sort of like cabal of men and women work together. I mean, the one thing you don't find in the Epstein files are basically any trans people, except for one victimized woman who was sexually exploited. And aside from that, I think a lot about these people out there who are like, oh my God, there are these vast cabals of like liberals and trans people who are out to abuse children. And you're like, there is actually a vast cabal of people who are out to abuse children, but it's like white billionaire men who are doing it publicly, who we've known about it for decades. They're not sending coded emails about polenta recipes to Hillary Clinton. They're literally writing like the most disgusting things you've ever seen into the email.
And by that token, like it feels like, I mean, clearly if this ain't every accusation is a confession, I don't know what is.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that it's really interesting that the tactic or the strategy was to potentially sort of create a red herring, so that I guess it wouldn't actually be considered a red herring, because what it was doing is it was actually happening, but it was like shifting the focus so that we're not on these white billionaire men. It's, oh, just your political. It's just the Clintons because they want to win in politics. I'm not saying that the Clintons are obviously in the files, but I'm saying back then the conversation was like, it's the Democrats, it's the registered Democrats that are raping all the children. Every registered Democrat is raping children. Like that was what it boiled down to. And the impact was that the people involved in QAnon were essentially saying we have to get Democrats out of office because Democrats are child abusers, and that's it. And that was the takeaway, when clearly that's not the truth. That's an inaccurate statement. And that's why I think so many people, so many progressives and people on the left sort of shrugged off QAnon at a time as just being sort of wild and a conspiracy theory, without looking at Epstein and the people around him and the files and the emails.
And I think because some of them were caught up in those same files and same emails, and because some of them were so used to dismissing the concerns of people who, like, what? I'm not going to say that like QAnon shit posters are people that our politicians should necessarily be listening to, but I do think oftentimes when you have these conspiracy theories, people are dealing with real degradation in their quality of life, that things are going to a bad place for them, and they're doing crazy things. They're coming up with all of these, whether it's Comet Ping Pong Pizza Place is actually a sex abuse parlor, or that old lady in the woods is a witch, right? They're picking a scapegoat, and they're being led to that scapegoat by people who are more powerful than them, the Rupert Murdochs and all of that.
Material conditions being so bad.
Yeah, and we are living in a time where conditions are terrible, right? And so all of it is in some ways a distraction. It's a useful distraction for some people. Do you think anything's going to happen here out of the Epstein files? Like, do you think?
I hope so. I really hope so, and I demand it. But even the politicians who aren't implicated in the files, they don't seem to be. I mean, maybe Ro Khanna, they don't seem to be signaling that. I mean, I don't even think I've seen a lot of elected officials at the higher, like, federal level talking about it lately. Not considering that so much information just came out that is very, very questionable at the very best, or at least damning, and we're not seeing them talk about it. So it's almost like they're like, I'm over this. I'm not going to help this. I mean, clearly, the longer they've been in Congress, the more connected to this than they,
They've got fundraising arms somewhere, and they've been to a meeting, and they've had.
Yeah, so I'm not surprised that those people are not indulging or engaging in the conversation. But I do think that there is enough to take some sort of action. And, while it shouldn't just rest in one person's lap at all, I don't know if they need to do it one at a time, but I do think that, like, maybe the idea is very daunting. Be like, half our government is implicated in this thing. So, like, what are we going to do? Because I still don't get, I know that of course, there's a lot more information, and there must be people that aren't named in this that were still participating in it. And
they must know.
there must be. So that could be a judge that's like, nope, I'm not going to rule against. You know what I mean? Like, we don't really know. I don't
Mhm.
know if it's going to. What do you think? Do you think it's going to? People are going to be held accountable?
I mean, I feel similarly. I don't know for sure. I kind of in my gut think that like after Trump dies, the hold on the Epstein files, I think so much of it is coming from him right now because he's obviously everywhere in these fucking files and did every disgusting thing you can possibly imagine. And I wonder if after his death, it will be politically useful for some Republicans to suddenly have a conversion and be like, oh my God, I care so much about, like Marjorie Taylor Greene will suddenly be like, oh God, I had no idea he was a terrible pedophile. Gosh, some people should be held accountable. And we'll get like, 3 people held accountable. That's kind of like
Right.
my
And but I do, I mean, it will be politically advantageous for someone to use it, of course. And but it is interesting. I think that tide is already starting to shift somewhat, and probably more in line with the this administration's approach to immigration reform or whatever they're calling it, enforcement.
immigration deform.
Yeah, that we're seeing people defect in a way. We're seeing people pulling back and starting to speak out and saying, well, I didn't vote for this, or like whatever it is that they're trying to say. And so we're seeing that happen now. I don't really, have smoke for the people who are like everyday people whose material conditions, as we mentioned, are poor. But the people who are like these podcasters and like the bro
Hmm. The whole
the
manosphere.
yeah, manosphere, that's what it is. Um some of them, key number of them, are starting to turn, and we're seeing that happen now. I take it with a grain of salt because I'm like, listen, if we were talking about this happening, and you can't say that you didn't hear it because you actually convinced the Democrats, the registered federal worker Democrats in Congress, to get on your side in chastising people on the left who were using terms like this is going to be fascist and blah 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 blah. So don't I don't want to hear anybody saying, "Oh, well, we didn't know this was going to be fascist." Like, this is literally what we were saying it
Everybody
was going
said
to
it.
be. Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody was saying it. Now, granted, you know, it's not just Republicans that are contributing to fascism, and I hope that people will start to acknowledge that getting to this position is not the fault of the voters or the people who, not solely the fault of the voters. Our elected officials are currently demonstrating that they are not taking responsibility and not reflecting what the people are asking, which is to either abolish ICE, if you're much of the Democratic base is saying that, or at least really seriously and effectively address what we're asking in crying out against this. And we're not seeing that happen. Our elected officials right now are like, you know, making deals and saying, like what, I don't know what's
No,
going
the
on, but like
change
they're
that's
not
happening
doing
is
it.
like, no, it's the people on the streets in Minneapolis who are making some kind of changes apparent in the
They
world,
are. And our
And I
elected
think it's going
officials
to be
are
that
not
way.
living up to they're not meeting the
No.
moment. The Democrats are not meeting the moment either.
No,
And
we live in a
so,
neoliberal
yeah,
moment where like all of these people are incapable of changing the system because they are part of the system, whether they are
unwilling,
even like
incapable. Yeah.
slightly the side, the Democrats are
Hmm.
still part of the whole thing. And I don't think that this moment we're in is going to be solved through elections. I
It's
don't know
not.
what
It's
that
not.
exactly will
It
be,
won't.
but
It's not. It's not, and it won't. And I think that honestly, that was the same. Voting is important and it's key. And I do believe
Mhm.
that, there would have been some votes that would have been cast that would have made things a little less unbearable. But
Yeah.
I don't want unbearable fascism. I don't want I don't want bearable fascism
Bearable
is what I'm
fascism.
trying to
Yeah,
say.
nice
Yeah, I don't
fascism.
want
No.
bearable fascism. I don't want like fascism light. I don't want that. And that's what the Democrats are.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm just going to swing it right back around to Audre Lorde.
Audre
This
Lorde,
book
talk about it.
contains so many things about how do you survive oppression? How do you organize? How do you live? How do we get beyond this moment? And she might mention voting in there once, but there's no essay about how voting is going to save you, right? Like, there's a reason Audre Lorde made it through the 50s, one of the most repressive times in American history up
Mm,
until now, and had these lessons to give us. And those lessons were not organized with the Democratic Party. It wasn't wasn't ignore voting. It wasn't ignore politics, but it was that we, the people, who are at the heart of the Constitution and the country, have to be organizing ourselves, have to be following our internal compasses, have to be rejecting silence and shame and all of these tools that they use to control us and divide us and keep us fighting with one another.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Listen, if you haven't read that book, then what are you waiting for? Please go to allstore.com and join our book club where you can get you can purchase a copy of this book now. We've already sent out this book with our book club, but you will be able to receive, if you join our book club, books down the line. We've got some great books that we'll be announcing soon.
Oh yeah. Our next book, for those who are listening, we'll give you a little sneak peek, is A Black Queer History of the United States by C. Riley Snorton. A fantastic and incredibly necessary history. And I think one that takes a little bit of what we're talking about with Audre Lorde and a little bit of what we're talking about with politics and a little bit of what we're talking about with the Epstein files and the kind of shit that we're in right now, and sort of lets us re-see it all through a Black queer historical lens. Brilliant book. So sign up, get over there and sign up.
Yeah, and remember that we are back every single Tuesday. You can find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And if you are listening to this now and would like to watch us as we shake our heads in dismay and disgust, you head over to my YouTube channel where you can join and subscribe for free, and be sure to like and share and just interact as best you can. Push all the buttons, whether you're listening to this or watching this, because it really helps us out in the algorithm, and it doesn't cost you a single thing.
Not a thing. So yes, please leave us a comment, like us, subscribe to us, and join us next Tuesday.
See you then. Thank you so much for joining us today.
This podcast is part of Pride House Media, hosted by us, Peppermint and Hugh, produced and edited by Josh Rosenzweig, with original music composed by Nell Balaban.
If you enjoyed this episode, then don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And while you're there, leave us a rating and a review. It really helps others discover the show.
You can stay connected and join the conversation by following us at Peppermint 24/7 or write to us at questions@queer101podcast.com.
Thank you for listening. And remember, our history is your history. Stay proud, stay curious, and we'll see you next time on Queer 101.